As she said, my name is Nance. I'm the Gardens Manager at Whangārei Quarry Gardens, and I'm here to take you through some of its story today. Before I carry on too much, there's something of a disclaimer. The Quarry Gardens are very much built on the people. Over the years, there have been so many people who have offered their time, resources, money, expertise, equipment, and to try and name them all would be silly, and I'm no doubt going to miss people. So you'll notice in the talk there are a few names, but there is still much thanks for all those people and what they've done for the gardens. So the Quarry Gardens are a subtropical themed garden set not far from here up in the Western Hills of Whangārei. They're a community garden, and as the name suggests, they're set within a disused quarry. The gardens have been almost exclusively run through volunteer labour. At present, there are 2 full-time staff, I'm one of them, and 1 part-time. Everything else, from trustees, garden and desk volunteer crew, is all volunteer labour. I believe it's this unique combination of exotic-looking plants, community engagement, and volunteer labour that has made the gardens a must-visit destination for Whangārei area. But there's a lot that got us here, so we'll start there. In 1944, the Hardie Brothers opened the site of 37 Russell Road as a stone quarry. For some 30 years, the quarry supplied Whangārei and the surrounds with material for roading and other construction projects. Residents of the Kensington area could hear the blasting each day at around 4 p.m. The ground could be felt moving, and there was even talk of small rocks landing in people's properties. In some of the early black and white photos, including this one, you can see the holes and damage to the roofs and buildings from falling rocks after each blast. Aspects of the quarrying process are still felt today. The hundreds of dynamite blasts used to loosen the rock have left the stone fractured and loose. Rockfalls are a real risk in the Quarry Gardens, and the unreliable stone doesn't offer us any options for fixing bridges, boardwalks, anything like that. The material from the quarry was used in the causeway leading to Onerahi from town, and it was also used to extend the airport runway out of Onerahi. It was also possible, I've read, that stone from the quarry was used as a parade ground for the US Army camp during World War II down 3 Mile Bush Road. However, this would suggest an earlier start date. From the early old pictures, it looked like a busy, successful place. However, it wasn't without its setbacks. During the later years of quarrying, the more valuable blue rock started to travel further underneath, further underground, under a layer of clay and less valuable, unstable brown rock. More and more effort was required to access the more valuable rock. One of the attractions of the Quarry Gardens is the water, but with that water comes challenges. These challenges faced the owners of the stone quarry all those years ago, and one of the eventual factors that spelt the demise of the quarry was a flood that damaged large parts of the infrastructure. The damage from flooding and the less economical quarrying made the site no longer viable. In 1974, the current owners of the quarry, Western Aggregates Limited, donated the site to the council to become a part of the city's parks and reserves network. There was likely more to the gift or sale than the city's best interests at heart. With the transaction, it left Winston Aggregates free from having to pay to remediate the site, no doubt saving them a large sum of money. As part of the transaction, there was also a stipulation that the site was to no longer be used for commercial quarrying, also ensuring Winston Aggregates' commercial dominance in the area. However, for whatever reason, the council put the site in the too hard basket and let it lay fallow for about 20 years. This was the dump yard phase of the gardens. Old cars, construction and household waste and other junk was left on the site. During the 20 years, nature also had its say on what the site became. Pioneering plant species got in on the action. Unfortunately, a lot of these were pests. Gorse, pampas, tobacco weeds and others filled the spaces not left by dead cars. To give you an idea of the scale of what was left on the site, we recently dug 6 holes to build a small fence. The holes were not big, maybe half a metre deep, about this round. In those 6 holes we found enough car bits and old tracks to fill an ice cream container. That's 25 years after clearing the site on the side of a hill. A lot of stuff. It's hard to talk about the Quarry Gardens heritage without talking about Lawton King. Lawton first visited the site with his 2 young kids and a dog. There they are. The entrance gate was mangled, with the sign reading, "No trespassing shown." After bushwhacking up to the waterfall, Lawton could see a future here, although, from my perspective, perhaps only through squinting eyes and at a great distance. He could see the potential, hidden under all the weeds and junk. The site had a special feeling. The combination of microclimate, shelter, water, and proximity to the city made the site worth the effort. In 1990, Lawton King approached the council about turning the unused space into a community garden. Although the initial idea of the quarry becoming a public garden wasn't Lawton's idea, it needed his enthusiasm and vision to get the ball rolling. The council at the time, however, didn't share his enthusiasm, and at an initial meeting to present the proposal, thinking it would be jumped on by the council straight away, the mayor walked out of the meeting. Over time, with more meetings and the mayor walking out of each one, the project eventually got some support from notable locals. Visiting the Advocate newspaper looking for promotion, Lawton was turned down and they refused to publish his piece. A man named Ford Watson had just moved to the area and started a newspaper. He agreed to publish the story and met Lawton on site. Lawton was photographed sitting on a rock overlooking the quarry. It was just days later that that same rock fell 100 metres down the hill. Ford published the story in his weekly paper, What's On, and put it to the public with the question of what do people think. There was an opposing letter sent in, which started an ongoing back and forth through letters to the newspaper, including a Lawton writing in using 6 different aliases, not all actually positive, one of them including mother of 6. Eventually the feedback swayed to the positive, and at a meeting of over 200 locals, 130 voted yes to get the project moving. A newly formed group, Friends of the Russell Road Quarry, was formed and work started on the site.
Sorry, what year was that?
The last one?
Yeah, the meeting, that public meeting.
Well, it would have been, I think, about 26 years ago. That's my best guess. So the trust has been running for about 25. It was just before that. So Friends of the Russell Road Quarry organised monthly working bees, starting at the front gate. Some of the early volunteer days had mixed results, with volunteers unwittingly pulling out rangiora and other native trees. Although at the end of the first working bee not a lot was done, the community engagement through working bees and volunteer garden days has stuck around. A local man named JJ had a small contracting business and offered to clear up the proposed car park. He told Lawton that he needed to get help, get the contractors in to do this work. Lawton put this to the committee, that local contractors could be convinced to come and help offer their support. At this stage, permission still couldn't be gained from the council to work on the site, but the consensus was to bow the laws, police and council, and to get stuck in anyway. Very typical of Quarry Gardens. Digger days were organised, when local contractors brought in their gear. Plans were made to feed the workers, but in the end, a local bakery donated free pies to feed everyone. Fuel would also be needed to run the equipment, and a local supplier was contacted for a discount on the fuel, but in the end, this was donated free as well. When clearing the site, there were surprises to find as well. What are now our tunnels, our eco tunnels, were covered in weeds and blocked with metal. While clearing the site, the tunnels were discovered, offering a great surprise, as you can see on that day. These would have been used to transport material while the quarry was still running. A master plan was created for the site, and this included a man-made lake at the top of the gardens. When work started on clearing the old lake, old bricks were discovered in the quarry. These were from the town hall behind the Citizens Advice building and had been secretly dumped on site. 26,000 cubic metres of soil was removed to build the lake. Rubbish found while excavating included an old Bren gun carrier and tanks. Everything was pulled out and put aside, and a local scrap metal dealer came and collected everything for free. The fill from the lake was used to fill the flat land that is now our car park and visitor centre. Just very early coming together. 2005, the garden suffered from what was to be 4 different deliberately set fires on the hills surrounding the gardens. After the first 2 fires, the then garden manager David Muir started to see a pattern emerge, with the fires being lit around the full moon. Yep. With this theory, a warning was put for people to keep an eye out on the full moon. Sure enough, more fires were lit, and a lot of native vegetation was lost. Although the perpetrator was identified, various complications meant little action could actually be taken. An ambitious plan was made to regenerate the area, and 250 volunteers planted 10,000 trees in one day. Another great effort from the Quarry Gardens community. From 2009 to 2011, a scheme called Community Mix was established through Work and Income to provide 12 school leavers with employment over 2 6-month periods. Under the supervision of stonemason James Mackenzie, locally known as Dr. Rock, Gaben walls were built right throughout the garden, providing a strong backbone to the landscape and filled with rocks similar to that would have been quarried from the site. The scheme offered a level of consistency to the attendees, while also providing the Quarry Gardens with the muscle to complete some of the heavy jobs. We have a tractor these days. In 1998, a metal 2-bay garage was situated in what is now our car park for the volunteers to use while working at the gardens. Over the years, plans were dreamt up and then formalised to build a multi-use building across the street. This space was to house a cafe, a visitor centre, public toilets and a volunteer meeting room. Work started on the Grant Harris Design building in 2014 and the building was opened November 2015. The building encompasses aspects of the quarrying heritage of the site with stone-lined exterior walls and exposed steel beams. This space has been a huge asset to the gardens. It now holds the hugely successful privately run Quail Cafe and is the first port of call for visitors coming to the gardens. The volunteer room has provided a great place to meet, have breaks and plan ongoing projects at the gardens. The gardens have suffered from many floods over the years. On the 29th of March 2007, the Quarry Gardens suffered from a large downpour, receiving 280 mils in 2 days. With the rain came wind, damaging plants throughout the garden. The flooding river damaged the abutments to a bridge, and the then garden manager had to save the bridge from being washed further down the river by pulling it out with a 5-ton digger nearby. Large boulders could be heard rumbling down the stream, pushed by the strong flow of water. July the 10th, the same year, saw 170 mil in 24 hours, but on top of already sodden ground. Again, strong nor'easterly winds accompanied the rain, ripping camellias out of the ground, pushing a monkey hand tree over, and stripping many garden beds of mulch. No doubt much topsoil has been lost in events just like this washed down the river. On July the 17th, 2020, a massive flood once again ripped through the gardens, leaving a trail of debris and destruction. Blocked river crossings diverted tons of water and gravel down the paths, creating all sorts of problems. A deluge of mud and rocks piled high along the walking tracks made it impossible to pass. So this is outside our visitor centre. It shouldn't look like that. Quite a mess. A mammoth effort was required by the volunteers to clean the mess, and once again the outpouring from the community was outstanding. Digger drivers volunteered their time to the effort, clearing paths and reinstating banks that had slipped. Giant concrete blocks were donated to stabilise the large slip areas. Topsoil too was donated to fill voids that had been created by the slip. Money as well was donated towards the flood relief fund. The work done by the volunteers was outstanding, and a credit to everyone involved. Within 5 weeks, the gardens were fully open to the public once again. The ability within the garden and those that look after it to bounce back and recover from adversity is impressive. And unfortunately, February 2023 this year gave us one of the biggest adversities yet. Cyclone Gabriel dumped months' worth of rain into already sown ground from a La Nina affected climate. The garden themselves suffered 4 slips on garden land, as well as further slipping upriver from our lake, spilling sediment into the stream. Countless trees were lost as a large slip tumbled through the beautiful Dell garden, including a large totara that went right through our beautiful laminated timber rotary bridge. Quite sad. Initial slipping was thought to be minor up at the arid gardens. The volunteers set to work clearing a small pile of clay, feeling good about their efforts and feeling relieved to have survived as they did. However, further rain in the following days pushed the soil beyond its abilities to defy gravity, and a huge slip crashed through the arid garden, destroying 2 newly constructed shelters and reaching the lake below. Our small John Deere tractor wasn't going to cut it this time. It was at this point that the Whangārei Council came on board in a big way and organised contractors to help rebuild our garden. On and off for around 6 months, we had truck after truck removing slip material from the garden, taking it to Clement's quarry for dumping. So sticky was the clay at times that it was breaking trucks. Great effort was put to stop any sediment reaching the stream beds. Bunds were built to catch the runoff, allowing it to dry before removal. 5 different slip faces were hydroseeded. This is where a helicopter drops a sticky seed mix into the exposed soil with the expectation the grass roots will help stitch the surface together, reducing runoff and minor slips. Only one slip had complete success with the hydroseeding. This is it here, this is the Cafler slip. All the rest was simply moving too much and the seed had no chance to germinate. The theory is that the mix also contains native tree species, and we look forward to seeing these come up in time. As anyone who has visited the gardens in the recent months knows, the large lakeside slip has stopped all public access to the lake itself. It was a shame to have the crown of the gardens off limits and not being enjoyed. One volunteer day, a few volunteers and I were considering the problem and wondering just how we could get around it. An old, no longer garden area sat unused and a perfect place to sit and watch the lake and waterfall. We spent some time investigating the possible paths and an idea to push through the bromeliad garden with a new path, opening up this area to the public was born. The plan was discussed at lunch, and by 2 p.m. at knockoff, we had cleared a path and possible new stairs and gardens were already in the design stage. About 2 months later, this area is now fully open to the public with a walking track, a circular walking path, new timber stairs, landscape gardens, and plan to jump the spillway with a new bridge to increase the lakeside area available to the public. This project has injected new excitement to the volunteers, and all have enjoyed the new perspectives and the positive feedback from those visiting the space. The area is still looking for its name, with Lakeview discounted for its similarities to a new subdivision. All ideas are welcome. We're lucky in the gardens in that we have a unique set of environmental factors that provide a wonderful microclimate for growing plants. We run east-west, giving us different levels of sunshine for different areas of the garden. The stone and water act as a thermal bank, slowing the rise and fall of temperature, meaning frosts and extreme highs and lows are less likely. Stronger winds are also much less of a problem, with nor'easterlies being the only wind to really stress the garden. It is this microclimate that has allowed the gardens to grow special plants, like the dinner plate fig, my friend over here, Ficus demropsis, the sheep-eating plant, Puya chilensis, and the silk floss tree, Ceiba speciosa. So the dinner plate fig is native to New Guinea. It is the largest fig in the world, with fruit going up to 6 inches in diameter. As the name suggests, it also has a very large leaf. This leaf is cooked and eaten in its homeland, and the fruit too is edible, but only really as an emergency food. The figs are pollinated by a small wasp in New Guinea, and in New Zealand we lack the pollinator, so our fruits stay unpollinated and smaller. The tree is really rather spectacular, and one of the most asked about plants in the garden. The three on show by our visitor centre are only around 15 years old, but stand at about 8 metres tall already. Because we don't have the pollinator in New Zealand, all reproduction of the plant is done asexually. In this case, it's aerial laying done by one of our volunteers. The bark is stripped back to expose the cambium layer, and a wad of wet growing media is wrapped around the wound and then wrapped with plastic. This will sit for roughly 3 months on the tree, and then successful plants will be grown on. We had someone visit the garden recently who saw the aerial laying. It's been wrapped in something that looks like a bread bag, and they wondered if it was some sort of possum trap. So I had to put that right. I'm not sure how that's going to get a possum, but there you go. It takes around 6 months to have a new plant ready for the garden to sell, and they're so special and unique, it's not unusual to sell for $200 plus for each plant. The sheep-eating plant, native chili, is a wonderful descriptive name. It comes from the rather outrageous spines that run along each leaf. The spines mean any sheep, unfortunate enough to stray too close to the plant, are held in place until its rescue or demise. Should the sheep reach an untimely death, the rotting corpse will help feed the plant as it breaks down. Or so the theory goes. The plant grew in the gardens for 15 years before finally setting up a spectacular flower display. The silk floss tree is native to the tropical and subtropical regions of South America. It gets its name from the beautiful flowers and seed pods that form on mature trees. The flowers are large, they can be as large as your hand, and once pollinated, green pods form full of pea-sized seeds and fluffy substance, which in the past has been used to stuff life jackets and upholstery. It's thought that the monarch butterfly is the only pollinator in New Zealand, as our bees and bumblebees are too small to reach the nectar. The other obvious feature of the silk floss tree are the spines that form along the trunk and limbs. Like the sheep-eating plant, these spines mean business. You only make the mistake of using the tree for support once. The spines are great at collecting dew, allowing a certain drought resistance to the plant. It also stops animals from being able to climb the plant to eat any part of it, which is where another name comes, monkey no climb tree. No one's going to climb. Although not as exotic as the last three examples, the garden houses a large collection of camellias. The spectacular collection of over 200 camellias forms our most prized plant collection. This internationally unique collection is built around the camellia cultivars, produced by two local plant breeders, Jim Finlay and Osborne Hut, including many fragrant varieties found in no other public garden in the world. Our first plantings of camellias in the garden started 25 years ago, and some of these camellias have grown into large trees. The maturity of this collection means the camellias are integrated into the garden as a whole, and a lovely green backdrop for the tropical plants while the camellias are not flowering. Whangārei's climate, as you probably know, is very humid, so the trees are kept quite open and overhanging trees cut back to allow enough light to minimise potential disease problems. The trees have beautiful blooms, beautiful blossom over a long season from March to October, and it's worth putting your nose into each bloom to experience the scent. You can even help contribute to pollinating with pollen sticking at the tip of your nose from bloom to bloom. The collection was recently submitted to the International Camellia Society as a Garden of Excellence. There are only 2 Gardens of Excellence in New Zealand for camellias, Auckland and Dunedin Botanic Gardens, and I believe only around 50 in the entire world. It would be a great success to be awarded this recognition, and we eagerly await the outcome any day now. Earlier this year, we were also awarded a 5-star garden rating from the New Zealand Garden Trust, equal to the likes of Auckland Botanic Gardens. The rating runs from 1 through to 6, with the 5-star rating being a garden of national significance. It's worth noting we were only 1 point out of around 290 points for reaching that 6-star rating. That would put us as a garden of international significance. It was unfortunately only days after this award that Cyclone Gabriel tore through the garden. As the rebuild continues, we are working hard to get back to that level and to push for that last point. Out of interest, should we receive our Camellia Collection Award, that would offer us the point to reach the 6-star rating. The volunteers and staff could never be mistaken for sitting on their hands. We have current and future projects in the pipeline, including a new bridge to cross the stream after losing the rotary bridge, and improved accessibility throughout the gardens. With the loss of the rotary bridge, we lost easy access between the two sides of the garden. Barfoot Construction and Hawthorne Geddes were put to work to build us a new bridge. In the end, it turned out to be a recycled bridge. Up in Modiwa, there was a bridge that was too low and was causing flooding in the region. At a meeting with all involved, a set of pictures of the old bridge and a plan to recycle the beams were put forward. It was too good to pass up and entirely in keeping with the Quarry Gardens style. The bridge was installed last week, and we ended up with 3 of the 5 concrete beams and a bridge strong enough to park every vehicle the Quarry Gardens owns and all our volunteers on it at the same time. Access for lifting the beams in was the real main challenge. We ended up having to pull apart the entrance garden with much mess made in order to slide the crane in with just inches to spare. The install went well, and we are enjoying already having this access returned. Improved access has been a growing feature of the gardens. A few years ago, Wally Jovich, the garden's patron, generously donated funds to get a large part of the garden's paths sealed with recycled asphalt. COVID and cyclones held up this project, with this year finally offering us the opportunity to push the go button. We had roughly 1,200 squares of paths sealed, and the improvement is wonderful. It's now much easier to move throughout the garden using prams, wheelchairs and walkers. I saw this need for improvement firsthand when we had some visitors from a rest home a few months ago. The nurse tried with little success to push someone in a wheelchair up a very slight slope with gravel on the path. Progress was all but impossible, and only through the help of myself and other members of the public could they make any progress at all. Once on the fresh asphalt, however, progress was easy. I hope to continue the improvement to attempt to remove as many boundaries for participation as possible, with the aim of making the gardens for all to enjoy. So, some may ask why. Why tackle such a challenging site? Or why offer so much of someone's time for no pay? There is a couple who volunteer at the garden today who can be seen in early photos cutting their way into the gardens down at the main road. That couple would have clocked up around 20,000 hours of service to the garden since. That's just 2 of our gardens. On a rather standard volunteer day, we would have 15 garden volunteers doing a 5-hour day twice a week. That's about 7,000 hours of volunteer labour every year in the garden. We also have a volunteer sitting behind our visitor centre desk for 1,800 hours of every year. So, how is it the gardens can find and retain so many volunteers? And what is it we can offer in return? Declining states of mental health are a worldwide problem. In 2022, the World Health Organization estimates 1 billion people worldwide suffer from some sort of mental disorder. That includes 1 in 7 teenagers. At the same time, more and more research is going into the place nature and natural spaces can have in alleviating mental distress. The Mental Health Organization in the United Kingdom says, research shows that people who are more connected with nature are usually happier in life, and more likely to report feeling their lives are worthwhile. Nature can generate many positive emotions, such as calmness, joy, creativity, and can facilitate concentration. Nature connectedness is also associated with lower levels of poor mental health, particularly lower depression and anxiety. Without wanting to exaggerate what we are doing at the Quarry Gardens, the benefit we can offer the public and our volunteers is huge. By creating a calm, natural environment, replacing the city's noise with the sound of running water, and offering many places for contemplation or reflection, we are creating an opportunity for healing and mental health resilience building. The effect of mental health and its treatment costs New Zealand somewhere in the vicinity of 4 to 5% of our GDP. That's billions. Natural spaces like the Quarry Gardens have a place within the spectrum of treatment and can offer a cost-effective means of regulating mental health. For our volunteers, that can be fewer health visits or bills, less medication, less gym visits, our garden is STEM, and a general feeling of being part of something bigger than oneself. The reason we attract and keep volunteers or have locals returning to the gardens is the community it builds. The connectedness and feeling of worth that being part of or visiting a project like the Quarry Gardens gives. A true tell of the worth of an endeavour can often be found when you remove the money. Stop paying a supermarket worker, they would likely stop coming to work. But what volunteering and being part of a community project like the Quarry Gardens gives is beyond financial return. So, how's the future looking for the Quarry Gardens? Gardening within a changing climate offers both environmental benefits as well as challenges. Large weather events are becoming more frequent, and the term 1 in 100 year weather event is becoming almost a joke, no longer sticking to its namesake. Steep hillsides will always provide a risk for slips, and preparation for slipping is all but impossible. The competition for funding has also become tight in recent years. However, the resilience within the garden and the gardeners is strong, and as each previous disaster has shown, the gardens will bounce back, often better than before. I believe the gardens have a bright future, and I look forward to seeing the place grow and evolve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Now, we've got some time if you'd like to ask Thomas some questions.
Yeah.
I am just telling a newcomer to the district about this talk and about Quarry Gardens, and he asked if you're able to take your dogs walking up here.
Yeah, so that's an easy one, and it's no. From very early on, I think they made that decision to exclude dogs. I believe the main reason is we have kiwi, so we border the forest. One second. With all the, show me. One second.
There it is.
That's better. So all up through the forest, there's kiwi that live up there. There's lots of trapping that goes on through the Forest Trust, and it's not uncommon for kiwi to come down into the garden. As not a dog owner, I think it's quite pleasant not having dogs there, but I know a lot of people don't like that, but that's an easy one. No dogs in the garden. Yeah.
Do you have, you must have a funding source from somewhere. Does it come from the council or?
We have a few. So we get some money from the council, which pays for my wage and a few other things. And their support is greatly appreciated. So the land is actually council owned. The trust leases the land from the council, which is partly why, or largely why, they came to offer so much support after Cyclone Gabriel. We have donations to enter, plant sales, we have festivals, which is a perfect segue to do the little plug. So the 1st, 2nd and 3rd, so this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we have a garden festival. It'd be great to see you all there. We run them, Sculpture Northland and Garden Discovery, about one a year festival, and that's how we raise our funds. We also have donations, so as I mentioned, Wally Jovic often give us some money throughout the year, and the gardens, it's wonderful, they have a habit of attracting generosity. People just turn up out of nowhere to give us free plants, free soil, favours, all sorts. And so we are able to offer or to run cheaper than an equivalent commercial operation. So that helps.
And a lot of your exotic plants, like this tree and things like that, that have come from overseas but don't grow in New Zealand, how have they come about? By donations or?
Some of them, I'm not entirely sure. A lot of them have come before my time. Someone at some point would have had some passion, they would have brought something in, it might have got donated to the gardens, and from there we've just built the collection. Yeah.
Possibly I can answer some of that. In their very early days, they would arrive, we'll say, on their Monday morning to find that someone had been in, and by their little shed they would find plants. People had special plants in their garden, going back in time, I guess, to when there were no restrictions for bringing plants into New Zealand, and some really exquisite plants appeared back in the early times.
Yeah.
I remember them talking about it.
And it still happens now. We had a couple who have a nursery entirely out of the blue, unasked for, said they just wanted to give us plants. And so I said, that's fine, expecting them to give us a few plants. And they turned up with a horse float full. Just gave us. And then phoned up a few weeks later saying they were coming back up and we had some more plants for us. And we do a yearly trip to Kirikiri, to the nurseries up there, to buy plants. And it's not uncommon at one of them for us to be told that whatever's in our trolley is free. Or this year we went up a few months ago and sitting in the foyer was a trolley overflowing with palms. And the owner of the nursery said we didn't have enough palms, so here they are, free. So it just shows the generosity, but that's often how the collection has grown over time, very sort of organically. Yeah.
Thomas, do you have a 5-year plan or a 20-year vision for what you're working towards?
I don't know. Probably. We do it yearly. It looks at certain projects we're looking at, and then there's sort of an overarching goal. I think a lot of that associated with being self-sufficient as much as possible. Talking about funding, it's no secret that the council is tightening their belt, and we are in that belt. And so, as much as possible, it would be good to look after the funding ourselves, but it's difficult finding that balance between being a community-run organisation that's volunteer-led, that elicits things like people bringing horse floats full of plants, but then also trying to make $1 and trying to run a sort of commercial venture, so it's a bit challenging. And there are some, it's things like accessibility, the ability for, say, the blind to come. There is in theory no reason why they can't. People in wheelchairs, things like that. And so, at least while I'm here, my goal is to help with the accessibility, to remove those barriers of use. I'll come to you in a moment. Yeah.
You have much of a problem with possums?
A little. There's a lot of trapping. We have various perimeters of trapping that run from the garden. So in the garden itself, it's mainly trapping for rats and some stoats, if you're lucky. And then further up in the bush, there is a string or many strings of possum traps. We were discussing a big puya tree, I think it was, that had had some damage, and we were trying to decide if it was possum or rat, and whether or not we needed to do something about it. So not hugely, but they're definitely around. We catch them. Yeah.
Would it be a help if people submitted to the council's forthcoming annual plan in the new year, asking for more financial support for the paving? It would be wonderful to see it, the paving done like the Mount Eden Gardens and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that we could do.
Yeah. All support is obviously appreciated. I assume the council understands that the Quarry Gardens, as far as they're concerned, it's a reasonably cheap venture. We look after it mostly ourselves, with their support, of course. But that ongoing support makes a big difference. the extra staff we have now, it's huge what we could do, and that all costs money. So help is appreciated. Yeah.
In January, I had Australian visitors, and we took them up to the Quarry Gardens, and we were directed to go to the arid garden where the cactus was in bloom. It was brilliant.
Yes.
Did it survive Gabriel or not?
So the arid garden is probably the saddest story of the whole thing. So half of the garden is gone. The other half of the garden is inaccessible unless you scamper up rocks and walk under waterfalls and things like that. So the half that exists just needs a weed. It's by and large intact, but you just can't get there. So a lot of it was lost. The slip above the arid garden is probably the biggest challenge at the moment because there's no obvious solution. There's still more material further up. Where the water source came from is not entirely known, and it could continue. If you looked at the slip to the left in areas that haven't slipped, there are cracks that could have another big downpour could have got to. So to do anything under it is very dangerous at the least, which is why we can't access the back of the lake. And so I have no idea the future of the arid garden. It's a real challenge.
Can any of that material, those plants up there, be resited to another area that's similar?
Yeah, they could. The problem is having the space. Because we are what we are, there's very little space available for any new gardens. We get odd little bit here and there like we did with the new access to the lake, but by and large it's all gardened. So it's challenging. It could be relocated, but even just doing that would be difficult. Yeah, you can walk up there, I've walked up there, but you would never see anyone else there. It's not easy. Yeah.
I understand this address has been filmed. Will it be available through WDC website? A friend of mine who couldn't get here today.
We're hoping to be putting it on our YouTube channel, new channel we have for the library website.
Right.
I'm just, we'll have to process it a little bit and hopefully get that up.
Excellent. Thank you.
When you're deciding, like, up to this dry garden you were talking about, and areas that have been slipped, or do you have to sort of get engineers sort of permission or that sort of thing to? Yeah.
We can't really make any of those decisions. So the council appoints engineers and they tell us what's safe and where we can go and how we can go. For example, at the moment we have a safety plan that tells us what happens if we have a rain warning. For example, we can't access certain areas under existing slips, and at the moment we're fixed. So that affects access to the back of the lake, which is the next challenge. And it's a combination of engineers' expertise and council's level of acceptable risk. And as the Quarry Gardens, we sort of nudge as we can. But yeah, all of that is done through engineers, geotechs. They make all those decisions for safety, which is good for me because I don't have to. Yeah.
I know the access was around the left-hand side of the lake. The right-hand side of the lake never had an access. But very early on they had slip problem there.
Yeah.
Is that still slipping on that side, and is there a possibility the access could go that way?
I think the biggest challenge is, as I said in the speech, that the stone is not reliable. There's been talk of you can get close here to the back of the audience from where we can be now to where we could access the back of the lake. It's not far, but it's steep cliffs under potential rockfalls and water. So we've talked about floating bridges. We could use pontoons and anchor it at each end. And I think it just depends how long we can't do the easy access before we start the difficult access. But it's tantalisingly close. But there are rock issues for sure in that whole area.
Yes, yes.
Do the gardens benefit from the cafe financially, or is that completely separate?
Yep, so we just lease the space to the cafe.
Yeah.
So that's the financial version, but the other version is that when the cafe's busy, we're busy, and when we're busy, the cafe's busy. So it's very much mutually benefits to both. And there's a good working relationship from both sides. It's quite a good setup. Yeah.
Is there any chance that it will go to 7 days a week?
The cafe? I don't think so. They want a day off.
I appreciate that.